Hello and welcome back to the Intuitive Writer podcast and YouTube show. I'm your host, Apocalypse author, Camille Picott, and here on this bi-monthly show, I share the stories behind my stories. I give you guys a glimpse into my private intuitive writing practice and let you see how the stories that I write come to life on the page. Today we're going to be talking about my newest book, which just came out on August 8th. Only 10 days ago. I have to show you guys because the hardcover print copy arrived. If you're on YouTube, you can see it. It's beautiful. I love it. And it doesn't matter how many books you publish. There's nothing more thrilling than receiving your print copy in the mail and opening it and holding it in your hands for the very first time. It never gets any less thrilling. So you can buy the book on Amazon for $14.99, and the book is going to be, the ebook is going to be on sale for 99 cents through, I think like the 24th, maybe the 25th. So anyway, make sure you grab that while it's on sale. So what we're going to be talking about today is the book of John, and what I wanted to share was the fact versus the fiction, because there is a historical fiction element to this novel. And so I kind of wanted to peel the layers back and show you guys, what I pulled from the history books versus what I totally made up or where I completely went off in my own direction. Obviously with the zombie apocalypse in ancient Galilee, there was a lot of going off the rails, but there were quite a few areas where I did try to stay true to the historical stories as I found them. And then as we go through this, I'm actually going to go through it from the point of view of 4 of the main characters. We have Phasaelis, Herodias, Herod, and John the Baptist. And I'm going to go through each of the characters. I'm going to talk about the fact versus the fiction with each of them. And then I'm going to share a little bit of my intuitive writing practice and how it played with each of these characters. And I do want to have a disclaimer in the beginning that I am not an expert on ancient languages. I don't know how some of these names and words in my book are pronounced. So I'm going to do my best. And if one of you is an expert out there, you can send me a voice text or something and let me know how wrong it is, because I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it right. All right, so with that disclaimer out of the way, let's jump in. And the first character that we're going to be talking about is Phasaelis. Now, Phasaelis is a blip in the history books. Like, if she gets 3 sentences, she's lucky. She historically was the first wife of King Herod, who was later divorced. And there's not a whole lot written about her. She was a princess from the country of Nabatean. Again, I'm probably blundering that pronunciation, so forgive me. This was an ancient city in the region of Arabia. So she's of Arabian descent, dark skin, dark hair, and she was married off to King Herod of Galilee. So that's pretty much that bit is all true in the story, and from there I it took its own direction in the story. And so what happened was, as I was beginning to pull this story in, I was doing a little bit of research online, and I came across her name. And like I said, if she gets 3 sentences in an article, that's a lot. But after I read her name, I kept hearing it, I kept seeing it. And this is very much how my intuition works. I get these tugs or these pings, and when something kind of starts looping like that, I can tap into it. I can see that there's some substance there. So I came across her name, and it kept playing and coming up in my mind, and I realized that she was probably going to be important. So I just reached out with my senses, and I gave it a tug. That's what I do. I gave it a tug and said, like, hey, like, what's there? There's something that wants to come through. And her story started to fall in. This jilted wife of the king and her story with John the Baptist. And as I was pulling it in, I began seeing this romance between her and John the Baptist. And I dug into John the Baptist a little bit, and I saw that historically he never got married. So that actually worked out pretty well. And she was the first character that I really came in touch with for this first book. She's the first one that made contact. She's the first one that I brought in, and I started writing her story. And as I said, her name is a little difficult to pronounce, and being such a main character, my first thought was, well, I can't have the character have a name that nobody that speaks English can pronounce, because my book's going to be in English. And honestly, I hate those epic fantasy novels where like every other word has like 12 apostrophes and you can't pronounce any of them, and they just look really weird and you can't remember them. So I'm totally not a fan of words like that. So I shortened her name to Faye. And I hope that I was true to her character. She didn't seem to have any problem with it when I made that change. And I did that basically so that her name would be accessible to the mind of people that are reading it, so they can actually hear in their mind how her name is spoken. When my voice actor starts recording, it's going to be a name that's going to be very easy to pronounce, very easy to hear, very clear. So I did take some liberties with her name, and I also took some liberties with her story. Like I said, she becomes the love interest of John the Baptist, which there's nothing about that in the history books. I probably should say, with everything I'm going to be talking about today, some of you might consider the content to be spoilery. I don't really think about it as being spoilery. I'm thinking of it as being more like an extended movie trailer. But if you're really sensitive to spoilers and you don't want to know anything about what happens in the book before it happens, I guess I would hit pause and wait till after you read the book. But I'm hoping most of you out there just kind of see this as an extended trailer with lots of juicy tidbits to get you all excited to read the story. So anyway, I also got that between that and the pronunciation. Those are my disclaimers for this episode. I really loved working with the character of Faye. She's such a strong, determined woman, even in the face of being jilted by her husband. She's so strong and resourceful, and I absolutely love her character. One little interesting tidbit, historically, when Herod divorced her, her father got really pissed off, and he sent an army to go to war against Herod for divorcing his wife. So I did use that a little bit at the end of the book, in the giant climax with the huge zombie battle. Faye's family does show up with an army, and they're on their way to rescue her and to get retribution for her getting divorced. So that was kind of a fun little piece of history to weave into it. So as you read the book and you get to the end and her brother shows up with the army, you'll know that that was actually based on some historical fact. Next up, I'm going to talk about the character of Herodias. She is our anti-hero. Herodias is the one that starts the zombie apocalypse in ancient Galilee, and I have to admit, she is my favorite character. She's a little off her rocker, but her story, I find her so sympathetic, and I guess relatable in a way, because so many of us in life can have good intentions for the wrong reasons. So yeah, I found her very sympathetic. And it's interesting, when I first started writing the book, I really thought the focus was going to be John and Faye, John the Baptist and Lady Faye. And they're two of the main characters, but I never realized that she was going to be a main character. So I was kind of humming along. I was probably like, I don't know, maybe a third of the way through the book, and the few times that she'd appeared, she was just a very like cardboard cutout bad guy. There was nothing overly interesting about her. And when I'm channeling stories, when I'm in alignment with the story, with the inspiration, it comes through very clearly and very easily, and I can write really fast. And what happens when I get out of alignment with the story is the story stops flowing. Some people would call this writer's block. I don't really think it's writer's block. It's not that I'm stuck, it's that I'm out of alignment. It's that I've gotten too into my own ideas of what the story wants to be, and I'm not honoring what wants to come through me. So that's what happened. I was working on some scenes with John and Faye, and they were flowing, and I was really enjoying them. And then all of a sudden they came to a screeching halt. like there was no story. The story was totally gone. And I was like, okay, I've seen all this pretty clearly. Why did the story stop? So I took a break and I talked to my stories. So I did. I'm like, okay, Jesus Christ zombie killer, what's up? There's obviously something that I missed that really wants to come through, or I took a wrong turn somewhere. You're gonna have to show me because it's not coming out and I don't know what you want. So I don't know, maybe a day or two went by and I was out doing a trail run, and I actually, when I'm by myself, I actually get a lot of like quality channeling time when I'm out on the trail because there's no one around me, I have no distractions, and it's really easy for me to connect with the different energies that want to come through me and bring them in. So I was on my way up this really big hill and I heard Herodias and I felt her, and I remember like stopping on the hill and I was like, oh, wow, maybe she wants to be a main character. Like I didn't realize she wanted to be a main character. So like I said, when I feel these intuitive nudges, like I give them a yank. So that's what I did. I gave it a yank and the story started to tumble in. And when the stories come in, a lot of times I see it like a movie. A lot of times it comes like, I call it a download. It's like this huge package of information, story information. And sometimes it's kind of a combination of both. And that's kind of how it happened. And so as I was out there on the trail doing my thing, I just started pulling her story in, and I was like, holy shitballs. She's big. She's not just this cardboard cutout bad guy that's doing her thing and making zombies over here. Like, she's got a story to tell, and she's got a voice and opinions. And it probably took like another week to really start to get all the various pieces of her story. And what's another really interesting about channeling stories and working with working with inspiration, I don't get things in order. It's weird. But I guess I always talk about writing as being a co-creation process, right? It's me, this physical being, this writer here on this plane, and then it's the energies and the inspiration that's here, that's working through me, that's channeling through me. So there's definitely this co-creation thing that happens. So when I receive the pieces and they're out of order, it's my job to put them in order. So I just started writing her story, and like I said, the pieces were all coming in out of order, and there's so much surrender that goes into my process, because a lot of times I have no fucking clue why I'm getting this, like, okay, like this is a weird scene, I don't get it, I don't get it, but okay, I see it, I hear it, I feel it, I understand it wants to come in, so I bring it in, I write it down, and I trust that I'm gonna figure it out later. And that's what happened. I was bringing in all her pieces, and when I got towards the end of bringing in her pieces, like it all clicked. I'm like, oh, this is all how she learns about zombies, how to make zombies. So it's kind of like this zombie origin story set in ancient Rome, and I had to surrender and I had to bring it in to see where it was going, because it didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense. And that's a big part of my intuitive writing practice, is having that trust and surrender. And it can also be very uncomfortable, the surrender piece. There was another scene that I was working on with Herodias, and it was the backstory of her love with Herod. And I saw it very clearly. It happened at a Roman orgy with some animal sacrifices, and I think Roman orgies, I think their reputation precedes them. They're very carnal and graphic. So the story's showing it to me, and I'm just like, okay, all right. And so I tried to write it in a couple of paragraphs, like 2 or 3 paragraphs. And then I tried to move on, and the story was like not having it. Again, like when I'm not in alignment with my story, when I go off the rails and try and do my own thing, the story stops. It totally stops. So that's what happened. The story stopped, and I was like, oh. I was like, you guys are killing me. I don't want to write an extended goat orgy scene. And the reason that I call it the goat orgy scene, because they sacrifice a goat. They also sacrifice some puppies. Okay, momentary segue. There's a Roman word for puppy sacrifice. Did you guys know this? I don't know it off the top of my head, but I came across it in some of my research because apparently sacrificing puppies was so common that there was a word for it. Sort of like in America, we have something called drive-by shootings. In Japan, in Japanese, there's no direct translation for this concept of drive-by shooting. There's just shootings. There's not different types of shootings. So I find that very interesting. Language itself, I love language, and the fact that the Romans had a special word for puppy sacrifice. It's hard to talk about sacrificing puppies. So anyway, I started calling it my goat orgy scene. I'm like, God, fuck, like they want me to write this goat orgy scene, which, is not very comfortable for me. I mean, first of all, I'm a total animal lover. I'm a vegetarian, and it's hard to write about sacrificing animals, and then it's hard to write about people running around naked all over the streets, like having crazy sex. It's not totally comfortable with me. So I fought it for like half a day. And I've been doing this long enough now that I can recognize when a story wants something, and I always give in. Some of the battles are longer than others. Some of the battles are weeks or months, but this one was only like half a day. They've worn me down over the years. I understand how this process works. So I wrote it. That's what she wanted to come through. And as I was working with these alternating energies of Faye and Herodias, one is very like pure and light, like her love, Faye's love with John. It's very innocent and chaste. Whereas Herodias's relationship with Herod, it's very carnal and graphic. And so I had these two kind of diametrically opposed energies that were coming through the story. And again, I talk to the story, I'm like, what is up with this? Like, this is, Jesus Christ zombie killer story. What's with all this like love and crazy sex? Like, what is it? And the story talks back. It talks back to me. And what it said was it's an expression of divine feminism. Both sides of the coin, the dark, the light, the yin, the yang, like these two characters kind of embody the whole of this divine feminism, and they express different versions of femininity and the divinity that comes with feminism. So that was beautiful. I thought, okay, that's cool. That makes a little more sense. You still made me write a goat orgy, but I guess I can get over it. I survived. So yeah, that's what it was like working with the energy of Herodias. And historically, she is the second wife of Herod. He fell in love with her and divorced Phasaelis. And she was his sister-in-law. She was married to his brother. And yeah, so they fell in love and got divorces and got married. So that definitely played a role in the story. What else do I want to talk about? I guess I should talk a little bit about John the Baptist, because they had it out for John the Baptist historically. When Herod divorced Phasaelis, he came under criticism from John the Baptist. He was very vocal about what this leader had done, divorcing his wife and remarrying. So there was conflict between John the Baptist and Herod and Herodias. Of course, it's expressed in the novel a little differently. John actually becomes, he's leading the resistance, trying to stop the zombie apocalypse. So it's not expressed exactly the way it came out in history, but he is set up as the main opposition to these two characters. We're going to take a brief pause from our show. I just wanted to express my gratitude to all of you for being here and being part of the journey. Please like and subscribe to the Intuitive Writer Show on your favorite platform, whether that be YouTube or one of the podcast platforms. And if you are on YouTube, please hit that notification bell so you can be notified when new episodes go live. And if you'd like to support me, please consider buying and leaving a review of any of my novels, which can be found on Amazon and Audible. And also consider joining my monthly Patreon team. It's $5 a month. I host monthly live chats where you can join me and ask any questions that you'd like. And I also have other goodies that I post monthly for my members. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And let's get back to the show. Next, I'm going to talk briefly about Herod. He is definitely one of the flatter characters. There wasn't any soul behind him or energy that I was working with. So there are two Herods. There are two King Herods in history. There's number one, King Herod, who was the king of Galilee. He was the king, and he had 4 children. And Herod Antipas is the one that you meet in the story. He is the antagonist of John the Baptist. They're both called King Herod. You'll see it referenced in different articles or books and whatnot. So I decided to use the title of Tetrarch. They did call it the Tetrarchy because the original King Herod had 4 children. He divided his kingdom into 4 pieces and gave one to each of his children. Tetra meaning 4, so it was a tetrarchy. There were 4 different sub-kingdoms within this area. Herod got Galilee. So that's what I call him in this book. I call him Tetrarch Herod, and I do that to delineate him from his father, who was the true King Herod. But a lot of times you'll hear references to King Herod killing John the Baptist. And there's a couple stories about how he killed John the Baptist. One story is that they had him stoned to death, and the other story is that he cut off his head and put it on a platter and served it to his wife Herodias as a present. Wow, talk about romantic! Every girl wants a guy like that. So that there is a moment in the book when Herodias says that she wants John's head on a platter. And it doesn't actually happen in the book, but I thought for the history buffs out there, they might think it was cool, the little tip of the hat to, one of these stories of how Herod ended up killing John the Baptist. The last character that I'm going to talk about is John the Baptist, the man of the hour. I love him. I hope you guys all love him as much as I do. I had a lot of gratitude to be working with his character and his energy as it came through in the story. He is really a true hero in all senses of the word. So I'm trying to figure out, there's a couple kind of key points that I wanted to tap into. I guess the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the name of his sect, the Jeru. So I've talked before on this podcast, I'm neither Christian nor Jewish. So that was part of the reason why I was super uncomfortable with writing this book to begin with, because I didn't feel qualified, because I'm neither of those things. And no matter how much research I did or potentially did into either of these religions, I knew I wasn't going to get it right. I knew it was never going to be enough. It would never be enough. And, when I thought about it, I realized, this story, it picked me for a reason. If this story wanted a Jewish or a Christian author, there's thousands of them out there. The story definitely could have picked one of those, but it picked me. It picked my lens, and that's what I have to bring to the table is who I am. So it wanted to come through me for whatever reason. So I really embraced that. And, anyone who's read the book knows this novel wouldn't be shelved with Christian fiction. It's not that kind of book. But they are reverent people, right? John and Jesus, they are reverent people. They have a beautiful energy to share. So I had to figure out how I was going to capture that in a way that I felt that I could do justice to. So what I ended up doing was keeping it super simple, and I made them followers of Yahweh. That's their God. There's a lot of ancient deity energy that comes into this story. Apollo, the god of light. We have Morta, the goddess of death. Yahweh, ancient storm god. So they're all there. There's a lot of old world deity energy in the story, and so that worked really well. It played well into the rest of the story. It was something that I was super comfortable writing, and because I kind of took a more fantastic approach to it, it didn't matter that I didn't have the background a legit Christian or a Jewish person. One neat thing that I ended up doing, I call them the Jeru people. Now, my husband is a history teacher, and he's always watching different history shows and whatever on TV. And he's got this amazing memory. It's like a library catalog. I mean, he pulls out all these different facts all the time, and like he never ceases to surprise me how much information is up in his brain. And so he told me the story about he'd watched some TV show. I don't know what it was, but it was a historian who was postulating that Jesus's tribe was a descendant of this sect known as the Jeru, and the Jeru were thought to have been mercenaries to the pharaohs of Egypt. So I love this. I love this story. So I ran with it, and honestly, I've done Google searches. I can't find anything about it. He remembers hearing it. We've never been able to relocate the show, but whatever, the information was there, so I ran with it. So John the Baptist and Jesus, they are part of this Jeru sect, and they are descendants of mercenaries who fought for the pharaohs. And the story that I weave in is that they were followers of the God Yahweh, and one day Yahweh came forward and he ordered them to lay down their arms and to cease what I call blood trade, right? Blood for money, and to pursue lives of peace. And so that is what John and Jesus' people do. They live peaceful lives as shepherds and fishermen. But within the Jeru, there's a warrior sect known as protectors, because even though Yahweh commanded them to lay down their weapons and live peaceful lives and to end their blood trade, he also ordered them to stay sharp. So there is a sect of warriors within the Jeru known as the protectors, and their job is to protect their people from being enslaved, protect their people from being conscripted, and then just to protect any other innocents, innocent lives out there. So John the Baptist in this book is a weapons master of the Jeru. He's a head protector, total badass. Jesus is his younger cousin who's in training, who's also a badass. And of course they used, their shepherd spears and their shepherd staff, to fight the zombies and stuff. So it's super cool. So I kind of wanted to give a little bit of backstory there. It's pretty neat. Working with the character of John in the story, it was really interesting. I tell you, this story, it really came to me in layers. A lot of times when I download, things are much more direct. This one was all over the place. I tell you, it started with Faye. I wrote a bunch of stuff. Then Herodias came in and I wrote a bunch of stuff. I can't tell you how many times I had to rearrange things because I'm like, God, you guys are just like throwing all this stuff at me. I have to move it around so it makes sense. But I guess I shouldn't complain. That's my job as the writer, as the receiver of this inspiration. So I actually had gotten all the way to the end of my first draft. I was meditating. I was connecting with the story. I was connecting with the energy of John. And he came in and the word that I got was addict. He wanted this addiction component to his story. And I was like, first of all, I was just like, you couldn't have told me this like a month ago, because I finished. Now I got to go back and add all this stuff. A little intimidating to make this beloved saint an addict. But again, I try to surrender to the energies that want to come through me, these stories that want to come through, and trust that it's there for a reason. So there's an addiction component to John's character. And what happens in the story is he loses a young wife and a baby at a young age, and he uses a type of herb called henbane, which he becomes addicted to, basically to numb his pain and to help him escape. And it becomes a very large overall issue in the story, and in part of the romance, Faye helps him overcome his addiction, and it makes for a really beautiful story. So that's definitely not in any of the history books, but that's what the story wanted, so that's why it's in there. And that's what it's like when I channel a story and I'm connecting with these things. writing what comes through and being in surrender. We've come to the end of our episode. I hope that you've enjoyed hearing about these different characters, what's fact, what's fiction, what's channeling, and what's pure story, what came to me and what wanted to be expressed. And I think it gives you an idea of how I channel and how I work with these energies. And like I said, it's a co-creation process. And then like the pieces that are me, the things that I'm weaving in. And how it all comes together. So I hope you guys all enjoyed it. I plan to bring you guys more of these stories twice a month. I'm going to try to keep it focused on whatever my current work in progress is. I really hope the next episode is going to be on the Book of Mary. That's book 2 in Jesus Christ Zombie Killer. And it's so good. It's so good. I love this story so much. And same thing, like it's kind of surprising me at every turn. Like, oh, okay, that's crazy. And again, it's like totally out of order. I'm getting this massive story about Mary and Yahweh. And I know it's not going to be the beginning. I know it's not going to be the beginning because it doesn't work. But I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to bring it in and I'm just going to trust and I'll just rearrange it as needed. Because that's what I do. And this series has been really intimidating and scary to work on. So I kind of bounce back and forth between being like super ecstatic because the story is so cool and then like being super scared and freaked out because I'm rewriting Bible history. And that's scary. But anyway, it's happening. It's happening. I should have Book of Mary hopefully out in December before the end of the year is my hope. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for reading. Please buy Book of John. I would be super appreciative if you left a review on Amazon and keep an eye out for the audiobook. I hope that's out before the end of the year. Recording starts in September. Thank you so much for being here, and I love you guys, and I will talk to everyone soon. Bye.